Welcome to Inside Scoop, Virginia. I'm your host. My name is George Burke. My guest tonight is Ginny Peters, who's the outgoing chair of the Fairfax County Democratic Committee. Ginny, it's great to have you here. I want to take a point of personal privilege at the front of the show. I think many of our viewers, and certainly Democrats across Virginia, Northern Virginia, Richmond, the party, know who Ginny is. Ginny's devoted more than 4 decades to electing Democrats in Fairfax County. And I, for one, just want to take a moment on behalf of the Democrats to thank you, number one. A lot of people don't know what you do. A lot of people don't see all the work that some of us who tend to be around a lot and involved a lot see. And you have done buku work for the Democratic Party for all these years. We're sorry to see you go. It's always good to bring some new blood in, and you made the decision not to run. And you know, I mean, the next committee will function as they will. But you know, I saw the kind of money you raised. I saw the kind of work you put into it. I saw how you held together all the mechanics of the coordinating. And we may not have had a coordinated campaign headquarters this time if it wasn't for you and people you know, and you know how to make those things happen. So I want to give you a public thanks for your term of office as chair, but all those other years that you were so involved, whether as a chair in Mount Vernon and all the other roles you have played I think when you got into politics, I was about 15 years old.
You're dating
and I was more interested in girls than politics at that point. So I just wanted to thank you. So let's get right into it. The Democrats won. We won pretty well. We won certainly in Fairfax County. We cleaned house. We had a couple of disappointments. Janet Olazak's race against Ken Cuccinelli, of course, that is going into a recount. State law provides for it.
Right.
And Janet has indicated she's going to do that. I suspect both you and I will be helping her on that recount. And we'll hope for the best. It's certainly an uphill battle for her to find those kind of votes. And hopefully we're going to be able to look at some of the paper, and we're going to be able to look at some of these absentee ballots. When Creed had his recount, there was a lot we weren't able to look at.
Right.
And I think our lawyers have learned a little more, and there may be some circumstances here, but hopefully we can look at everything just to make sure that the numbers are correct.
Right, and it's real easy for a judge after being in the polling place. And of course, the average age of our judges is something like 74.
Mm-hmm.
It's very easy at the end of the evening to transpose numbers.
We found that in one instance, in fact, as the first canvass.
You know, all of us didn't have exactly the right formula for what we were looking for. And as we progressed in this process, the first canvass after the election is tentative. After they certify it, then it's up for review.
But even before the certification, we have this canvass process, but everything's recounted the next day. A lot of our viewers probably don't realize that.
Yeah, and actually nothing's official until after that canvass is done. And there were not a lot of mistakes, but there were many. I mean, 5 or 6 that I know of. So there could be more out there. I'm not saying Janet can find 92 votes.
Although we're hoping.
But, yeah, we're going to try.
If we were in Chicago, we could probably find them.
As the 9th District used to say, oh, we'll vote those dead people. But, you know,
unfortunately,
it's a new age.
That doesn't happen in Fairfax. It's
and
a pretty
machines.
tight ship. And it's a pretty tight ship. And those people, so they don't all call us and yell at us. The people who do work the polls, it's a thankless task. You know, I think they make $100. I think the head election officer only makes $150 for the day, and they earn it. I mean, they work from 6 in the morning till about 9 o'clock at night.
Right. I mean, I don't know how they do it. I do not know how they do it.
So you have been through the recount process before, and you were at the canvass. I take it it's this month that we're going to run into this stuff.
Yes, I understand there's a training right before Christmas. I'm not sure when the actual recount will take place, but I know they've asked to use our headquarters for the recount training part of the operation, and we'll see. I'm not sure when it's going to be, but it's going to happen.
Well, you look at the election results, and we might as well hang on to the Senate for a couple of minutes. George Barker was on a couple of weeks ago, and he is the guy who put it over the top.
Right. Right.
I was waiting. I was at a campaign party that night, as you were, waiting, and we were waiting for him to come, and he kept putting it off and putting it off and putting it off.
Right.
Finally arrived after 11 o'clock. Missed the news, but I don't think that's what he was really interested
He wasn't worried
in.
about the news.
And he was nicknamed by the caucus as 21.
Yes. Mr. 21.
And he won by, I guess, 800 votes, probably a little less than any of us expected, but they were keeping track of their numbers. And, you know, you win by 1, you win by 100, or you win by 800. The bottom line is you win.
Yes.
And
yes. Turned the Virginia Senate blue.
And then, of course, we look at what was viewed as the premier race up here in Northern Virginia in the Senate, and certainly a race where they spent a heck of a lot of money.
Oh, yes.
The incumbent had the power of the guy that we all hope to unseat if he runs in 08, Tom Davis.
Right.
And that's Chap Peterson. That campaign there were a lot of eyeballs on it. There were a lot of people putting money into it. The parties were putting money into it. And then Tom Davis himself reached into his own PAC and dumped about $700,000 or $800,000 into that campaign.
Right. And Chap won that campaign all but one precinct, as I understand.
The only precinct I think he lost was the incumbent Jean Marie Devilites Davis's home precinct of Oakton.
Right.
So it was a substantial victory, and pretty soon I've talked to Chap and his people, and he'll be on the show one of these days to talk about his victory himself. But the other one was Colgan. But back to Chap, this was neck and neck till the very end, from what Dick Saslaw says.
Well, Dick kept saying, he's going to do it. He's going to do it. And you and I have been, on the receiving end of Tom Davis before, and I'm going, how can this happen? How can this happen? His wife isn't going to lose. He's not going to lose. Well, after 4 years of turning Fairfax County blue, it really did hit her very hard.
Chap worked hard. I can remember the election.
Very hard.
The election before the 06 elections. Chap was working the polls. I mean, he spent in Fairfax County polls. He was out there all day, greeting voters, shaking hands, and handing out sample ballots.
Right.
And he just wanted to make sure everybody knew him. And he's always had a pretty good lock on Fairfax City. I mean, that's his home base.
Right, that's his home.
And, of course, his delegate district, he represented the part of Fairfax County as well. But he made a conscious effort early on to get out there and grab people and go door to door and meet people before, I had a conversation with him shortly after the lieutenant governor's primary where we rehashed his campaign. And he laid out what he felt he did right and what he felt he did wrong, and indicated he was looking at the Senate race. And I, for one, as many others at that point, encouraged him to go for it.
Absolutely.
But thinking it would be a do-or-die battle, and it was.
Yeah.
But they ran a good campaign.
And where is he now? He's now down in the 1st District helping Phil Forget.
Phil Forget,
Yeah.
And we had
For Congress.
We had a big thank you party from on Saturday, and Chap wasn't even there. He was down working for Forget, and then we had a caravan of people who left that party and went down into the 1st District afterwards.
Listen, I'm going to Prince William tomorrow to make phone calls to get those people out to vote in the 1st District.
Well, the turnout there is going to be minuscule.
Yes.
And
but it's so important. If we could pick up the seat we could pick up another Democrat in Congress.
That would also send an incredible message across Virginia, because that district is more than 2-to-1
Yes.
Republican.
Yes.
We're talking about the first district congressional district of Virginia, where Joanne Davis had died several months ago. The governor called for a special election, and it was virtually 30 days to campaign. I personally think that works to the Democrats' benefit, because it gives the Republicans less time
Right.
to marshal their forces. But you have a 2-to-1 Republican majority down there at least, and you have a district that goes from Fauquier County to Matthews County and Newport News and the like.
Yeah.
You want to talk about a gerrymandered district? The 11th district is certainly gerrymandered, although it's turned blue again. But this district is like a really long snake with there's a couple of rats in the middle of it, is basically how I would describe it. And the chair down there, Suzette Matthews, she has a hard time even holding a meeting. You know, we have a meeting in the 11th Congressional District. We can all come. Some people have to come from Prince William, but everyone else lives somewhat within proximity.
Within a half hour, 45 minutes. But
It's hours of driving for some of those
Yes.
people to come together just to
Yes.
have a meeting of the first CD. So I think that a lot of work has been on. I know DPVA's got some people on the ground there, and certainly there are a lot of people out of Fairfax that have gone down and helped, and we hope for the best.
Yep.
And a minuscule turnout if Phil gets the Democrats out and those people keep banging on doors all day tomorrow, we may have a pleasant surprise tomorrow night. I'd love to see that.
That would be great. Yeah, we are working hard to make that happen. Because in a special election, I think the Democrats have the advantage. And I don't care where it is in Virginia. We tend to group together and help each other. And, you know, I'm in the 11th, you're in the 11th. We have people going down from the 10th, the 8th, you know, all kinds of people going down to help the other Democrats in this district. And that's our tradition.
Plus, everybody has been psyched. You know, Chap brought a lot of, both Chap and Janet had an incredible, and George Barker, these Senate races, they all had an incredible number of volunteers. And volunteers were hard to come by this time.
Yep.
In this campaign cycle. And they didn't pay a lot of attention to these supervisor races. The supervisors were desperate for volunteers.
Right.
The incumbents and the challengers. But the Senate races, they were there, they were walking, they were talking, they were knocking, and they were handing out that lit.
Right. It's not as glamorous as a U.S. Senate race or a congressional race or a governor's race. Volunteers, you know, some of these people only vote every other year. And this is the worst year for us,
Lowest
not
turnout.
only to get volunteers, but to get people to be active in a campaign.
Well, as we're going to be breaking in a minute, but as was said at the volunteer thank you party the other day, last year we did it to celebrate Jim Webb's victory. This year we did it in the U.S. Senate. This year we did it to celebrate a Democratic takeover of the Virginia Senate.
Right.
And if you don't think that's going to make a difference in how Tim Kaine is able to govern next year, then I'll sell you a bridge in Brooklyn, because the fact of the matter is it's going to make a big difference in a lot of ways. See you in 2 minutes.
This is Mommy's bed. Me and Jenny were jumping on it. Mommy's gun fell on the floor. I was a cowboy. Bang, 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 bang. I said, Jenny, wake up, it's just pretend. But she wouldn't wake up. If you give me a fish,
If you give someone a fish,
You feed them for a day.
Teach someone to fish.
You feed them for a lifetime.
give me a fish, and you'll feed me for a day. Teach me to fish, and you'll feed me for a lifetime.
Through Volunteers of America, you can help change lives in your community.
Mr. Studied algebra in school and got a better job than I could. You take the last cup.
Oh, no, Mr. Stuck in an entry-level job because you only learned basic math. I don't have a boss riding my butt like you do, so you take it so you can get back to your desk.
You know, I probably should, but maybe Miss AP Calculus with the $200 haircut in the big office upstairs would like a cup.
Oh no, Mr. What was your name again? Never mind, it doesn't matter. I'm too busy doing important things to care. I just came down for some sweet and stir.
You know, if my limited math abilities weren't keeping me from getting a better job, I'd quit this afternoon.
I don't blame you. But thank goodness you're stuck here because we really need someone to make the coffee.
Welcome back to Inside Scoop Virginia. I'm your host, George Burke. Jenny Peters, outgoing chair of FCDC, is my guest, and we're talking about the elections. The supervisors' elections, there weren't a lot of surprises. A lot of people didn't think John Faust would beat Joan Dubois.
Right.
And he did. And I think the numbers, he won by not quite 2,000 votes, but a substantial margin.
Yes. For Drainsville, that was a very substantial margin.
Talk about Drainsville a little bit and how what the demographics are like out there in general. I mean, generally, it's still viewed as leaning Republican.
Oh, yes. Very, you know, as I look at it, upper middle class. You've got McLean at one end and you've got Great Falls at the other end. And Vince Callahan held that seat for what, 28, 30 years,
the
something
seat that
like
Margie
that?
Vanderhyde took,
yeah,
correct,
and Margie Vanderhyde won that seat. When it was an open seat, people finally had a choice.
Margie was Democrat running, obviously in an open seat.
Right.
And she won it by several, I don't remember what the margin is, but she won it. It was a little closer than some expected, but again, a win is a win.
600-700 votes, something like that.
And but the Faust win was to some pundits, it was a bit of a surprise.
Yes.
And they worked hard, and he campaigned hard, and I think that people also reacted on the whole Tyson's Tunnel issue.
Oh yes, the tunnel I think was the biggest issue there, and why the current supervisor voted the way she did when there was a vote taken on the Board of Supervisors, which she didn't really need to do.
No.
Because they didn't need her vote.
The votes were there.
And I think that hurt her a lot.
You know, the reality of the matter is that the way this tunnel thing's shaping up, the way the whole rail to Tyson's is shaping up, we'll be lucky if we get the federal money at all.
Yeah.
But certainly the tunnel is the preferable route, but if it's above ground or nothing, well, the Board of Supervisors certainly didn't want to be in the position of being those who deep six the project.
Right.
And they view that rail to Dulles as being critical. I do too. I mean, it's ridiculous that we have an airport of that size that does not have public mass transit going right to the door.
Right.
And but then we look at McClanahan's race, and I mean, I think Mike did pretty well against somebody who bore the name of a former board chairman. The Fairfax County Parkway is named after his father.
Part of
runs
it,
through the
right.
middle of the district.
Part of it, yeah.
And Mike is a first-time candidate. I certainly hope he'll run again sometime in the future.
I think he did
I think
very
he did
well.
Very well. We shall see. There's talk that Pat Harity may be a thorn in the side of the chairman and the board a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm sure he has some illusions or delusions
a
of
definite agenda, I'm sure.
Of where he wants to go and where he wants to be. But let's look at some of these other races. We go to the big kahuna, Jerry Connolly, the board chairman, and he pulled 113,830 votes out of the county this time,
right?
Which was, again, in the lowest turnout year. He did pretty well, and he certainly exceeded the numbers he pulled the first time he won as board chairman.
Yes.
And it wasn't quite 2-1, but it was close. I mean, Bays pulled about 68,000 votes out of it. Bays surprised some of us. He came on real strong on the front end. I saw him at the chamber debate, and he was very theatrical and all into his You know, he certainly showed he was a trial lawyer.
Right.
But all of a sudden, the campaign just fizzled.
Yeah, it's like he gave up. Like the last 2 months of the campaign, he did practically nothing. There was no spark there. There was no, I don't know whether the Republicans gave up on him and said, you know, why should we throw our money at something we're not going to win? But it was really, I mean, September, after that debate at the chamber, and September came after Labor Day, it was like, this guy wasn't even on anybody's radar screen.
Mm-hmm. Connolly
and he
ran
didn't make any mistakes.
No, they just didn't do that much.
No.
I mean, Connolly ran a good campaign, and I think they were fully expecting this guy to go on broadcast television. This guy,
Yes.
Bays, has a lot of money.
Yes.
And personal wealth, and which, you know, Jerry's not wealthy, Connolly's not wealthy. He's, you know, middle class.
Right.
But Bays made a great deal of money as a trial lawyer in his practice, and I think the Connolly people fully expected him to dump several $1 million into paid media, particularly television, which would almost instantly change the equation.
Yeah, and I think it was like he didn't do that, so the equation couldn't be changed, and yet nobody was encouraging him to do that, whereas if I was him, that's exactly what I would have done, so that at least I had a chance.
Well, I'm glad he had Republican political operatives advising him instead of Democratic political operatives.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, it was he
very strange.
He talked a good line, although when you got down to the nitty-gritty on the issues, I have to say, I don't think Gary Bays did his homework.
Yeah, he didn't appear to have a grasp of what went on in the county, what goes on in the county, what happens, how to run the county. He didn't have a real big grasp of that.
Certainly,
and
Jerry Connolly's done it for 4 years.
Yeah.
And he's also a policy wonk. So he knows this stuff, so he was able to cite chapter and verse.
Right.
And Bays spoke in generalities. They spent, I found the Bays people spent a lot of money making recorded phone calls, robocalls they're called, into homes of voters. And he spent a lot of time trying to discredit Connolly with calls into Democratic households.
Yes, we got them. I mean, we got 2 or 3 of them. It didn't make any sense to me that he was wasting his money on the chairman of the Fairfax County Democratic Committee.
A word to the wise to any future Republicans. I wasn't real impressed with the people who ran Bays' campaign, so you may not want to hire them. Not that I even know who they are. But that's my advice.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, Connolly cleaned house on that, and you know, as we go through the rest, there wasn't a lot of, you know, Penny Gross had a spirited opponent,
right?
But she won basically 2-1 in Mason,
right?
And I know they worked hard. I mean, they didn't. Penny never leaves anything to chance. She was on the show a few weeks before the election, and she was out every day knocking on doors and the like. And, you know, I guess you always worry at the last minute.
Well, in the Lee district race, I think, was one that everybody was looking at also. If there was a chance, I mean, you had Joe Alexander there for, what, 28 years? Then you had Dana Kaufman there for 16 or 16. And then all of a sudden we have an open seat, and we have a young man, Jeff McKay, who'd worked for Dana for years, who wanted that seat. And you had a man who was pretty well known in Lee District among Republican circles, and Jeff beat him handily.
Almost 2-1. Again, not quite, but you know,
yeah.
I'm looking at 10,000 something to 5,000 something.
Right.
I'll make that 2-1.
Yeah. Well, and see, nobody expected that much of a lopsided race in either Penny's race or Jeff's race. They expected they'd be much closer.
The rest of them, you know, Sharon Bulova, of course, won very handily. No opponent. She had
basically no opponent.
A rail or green opponent, whatever they are calling themselves these days. Kathy Hudgens had 1, 2, 3 opponents.
Yes.
But still won handily. I know, you know, it's funny sometimes when you're on the inside and you hear these people worrying and you're saying, what are they worried about? They've done a good job, they'll get reelected. And that's generally what happens with a supervisor. If you've done a good job, you're always going to have enemies because you're always going to upset people in certain neighborhoods.
You're not going to do the right thing for everybody all the time.
And there's always two sides to an issue, and if you take one side, there's going to be people on the other side, and because this is localized, they do take it very personally, and even some of them, Democrats, will occasionally go out and vote for an opponent because they're
Right.
upset about something.
Well, I think
that
we
happened.
saw that in Kathy Hudgens' race.
And that was more, that was over the issue of Reston.
Reston town, right.
Whether
Reston becoming
becomes
a town.
city or a
Right.
town or whatever
Right.
it is. I live on the other side of the county, so I wasn't particularly, and it's not in the 11th district, so
Right.
not that we don't like Reston, I just don't personally pay a lot of attention to it because
Right.
it doesn't affect my sphere of influence. Jerry Highland, of course, had just a minimal
Token.
opponent, and
Right.
he did very well as well. And Linda Smith, of course, won her race in the
primary, right.
which was a very tight, close race.
Right.
Got a little nastier in a primary than I would like to see, but it was a fact of life. And so there we have the Board of Supervisors.
Yep.
We now have, everyone, there's one Republican, Mike Fry.
Well, and Pat Harity.
And Pat, oh, that's right,
Yeah,
I forget
and
about
Pat Harity.
Yeah, so
Yep.
there's two.
Yep.
But nonetheless, it should be an interesting year with the Board of Supervisors, and I think we'll continue to see good government that we've seen under this current administration for the past 4 years and for some years before that.
And I think
Under
when
Kate
Pat
Haley.
Harity gets there, he'll realize just how hard it is to make choices. When you're campaigning, it's one thing. But when you're sitting there on the board and you're saying, oh, we've got to cut this in order to keep this, or we have to do this in order to do this, it's not as easy as he might think.
And he'll feel the impact immediately in his district
Right.
with these cuts, and that's
Right.
what I think that he's not yet used to.
Right.
That he'll start getting his butt bit. We have just a few seconds left in this segment, and I hope you folks will hang on for the next half hour. We're going to talk a little bit more about politics. We're going to delve into a few more races, and then I think we'll take a look at what to expect next year. There's a possibility we may have the so-called Battle of the Titans.
Oh, yes.
In the 11th Congressional
District.
District.
Right.
There are two announced candidates now. There very well could be one or even two more. There may be two very well-known candidates, and that will make for more than a spirited race, I think.
Right.
So we hang on for the 2-minute break, and we'll see you on the flip side. Thanks for watching, and again, my guest is Ginny Peters, the outgoing chair of the Fairfax County Democratic Committee, so keep watching.
Some people in Fairfax County don't know what public access means.
Some think it's just another channel on the dial.
But it's much more than that.
It's the voice of the people.
People like you.
Your neighbors,
Your friends,
Or your family.
People who want to share ideas,
opinions,
Cultures, lifestyles,
art,
sports, music,
events,
entertainment,
history,
science.
beliefs.
People who want to learn about television,
producing,
directing,
cameras, audio,
lighting,
editing, or radio, talk, music.
whatever you think people should hear.
Public access is the place where everyone has a voice.
and it's the place where that voice gets heard.
A place where you can create your own form of personal expression.
So what do you want to say?
Whatever it is.
You can say it here.
Because we're public access.
For the people,
By the people.
It is about balancing our choices between the gray of the concrete jungle and the stunning beauty of the real one, between a stoic facade of granite and the fury of the canyon. It's why there's EarthShare, the simple way to find balance. EarthShare is the workplace giving program bringing the leading environmental groups under one umbrella. Support EarthShare, support them all. EarthShare. Please ask your employer about workplace giving. To learn more, visit our website.
Thousands of kids in this country have everything it takes to go to college, except the money. The United Negro College Fund. A mind is a terrible thing to waste.
Welcome back to Inside Scoop, Virginia. My guest today is outgoing Fairfax County Democratic Committee Chair Ginny Peters, and I'm glad to have her. We have a call from Vienna. I believe her name is Emily. Emily, how are you this evening?
I'm fine, thank you.
What can we do for you?
Well, I just wanted to congratulate Ginny on 4 terrific years as chair of the Democratic Committee in Fairfax County.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. You did a terrific job. The results speak for themselves.
We hope the next chair will have the same results.
Absolutely. I think next year is going to be a very good year.
Great. Thank you for calling.
All righty.
And we hope it's going to be a great year, too. During the break, Ginny and I were talking about the differences that exist still between Fairfax County and Prince William County. For example, George Barker won because of Fairfax County, which was most of the district, but there were 10 precincts in Prince William, and I think he lost I'm not sure he lost everyone, but almost everyone. It was all a key in terms of the margin of victory.
Right.
We did elect a new Democratic delegate down there, Paul Nichols,
right.
In Michelle McQueig's seat. But I think part of that was not only due to Nichols' campaign, but it was also due to the almost rabid anti-immigrant, and I'm not sure it's even all anti-illegal alien. I think some of it, they've just built up this level of, I don't want to go so far as to call it hatred, although some of these groups, Help Save Manassas and some of those stuffs, border on, in my mind, as being hate groups in terms of the way they say things. But the reality of the matter is in Fairfax County, we have seen a dramatic increase in certainly voting among many ethnic groups. Arab Americans have always been very strong voters, and they vote in vast, large percentages. But we're seeing, even in the Hispanic community, we're seeing increased levels of voting.
The Korean Americans are much more involved.
Yeah, they've been very involved too.
Right.
But you did you worked up some numbers here on some voting trends. Why don't you tell us about that?
Well, in Fairfax County in 2000, we had 11% Hispanics, 13% Asians. In 2006, that jumped to 17.3, or the change was 17.3. In the Asian group, it was 21.5. But in Prince William, they had 9.7 in 2000, a change in 2006 of 96.9%.
And that's part of what's causing, well, as I understand it, one of the things that caused the increase, and most of their immigration has been predominantly Hispanic, not all. I mean, there's already been an African-American population there, and some others, but the fact is that there's been so much construction there that many folks have flocked down there to work in the construction industry.
That's where the jobs are for them.
And so that's
it's
why
also where the affordable housing is for them. So
relatively speaking, I guess.
Yeah, well,
we think it's affordable, but if you compare it to the rest of the nation and the median income of a house price in Peoria or someplace, it's still pretty darn expensive for the average citizen to
when
move
you
there.
consider, Fairfax County and what it costs to live in this county, the real estate taxes in Prince William are higher, but the cost of living is a little cheaper. Gas is cheaper, groceries are cheaper. I mean, I don't live that far from Mount Vernon. It's like 10 minutes for me to get to Prince William. And I see the difference.
I certainly see it in gas prices because I was going down there a lot before the election, helping Bill Ryland, who ran for clerk down there.
Right.
And there was usually a disparity of 10 to 15 cents on gas. It was surprising to me. I guess part of it's their local gas tax or something.
The other difference between Fairfax and Prince William is you have a lot more blue-collar workers in Prince William than you do in Fairfax County. And the education difference is huge. The people who graduated from high school versus the people who have a college degree.
Although I'll tell you, what I'm hearing down there is how much that is changing. Because people are still moving into Prince William in droves, and what you now have are young professionals who can't afford to live in Arlington unless they get a little apartment, can't afford to live in Fairfax, and can barely afford to live in Prince William.
Right.
And so you're getting more and more people with advanced degrees and the like, and so it's only a matter of time, I think, before we see Prince William, I don't want to say become like Fairfax, but see Prince William turn more and closer to turning blue.
Right. I think a lot of people in Fairfax County are years in my age. I'm older than you are, but we've been here a long time.
Mm-hmm.
We bought our houses years ago. The double income, the dinks, the double income, no kids, can afford to buy a house in Prince William County, whereas in Fairfax County, the double income doesn't go nearly as far.
Correct, yeah. So we've certainly seen some changes there. Let's talk about a few of these House races for a minute. I guess the big win was the Vince Callahan seat.
Right.
And everybody predicted it, but you and I both know it was still a harder district to win than people gave credit. And I think Margie's opponent did a pretty, ran a decent campaign and kept her on her toes. And there were certainly some negatives that were thrown at her, some pretty big negatives that weren't necessarily true, but certainly were designed to get a rise out of the voters, and sometimes I guess it did.
And I think some of that didn't work because Margie and her husband have lived in this area for years.
Mm-hmm.
He was a lawyer in D.C. They're well known in the community. She has been so involved in so many things. She was Governor Keene's appointment to this and Governor Warner's appointment to that. So it wasn't like she was only involved in Democratic politics. She was definitely involved in the community.
And I think that's the sign of a good politician, and a politician who tends to win election is your involvement has to go beyond just the politics.
Yeah, you have to give to the community before people will respect you enough to vote you to an office. And I think she did that. She did that for a long time before she decided to run for office.
Mm-hmm. And she had, she made her way through that primary. She had a very good opponent in Rip Sullivan.
Yes.
Many of us bemoaned, and I've said it on the show before, many of us bemoaned the fact that,
he didn't
that
live
they were both
somewhere
running
else.
in the same district because they were both great candidates.
Right.
And there weren't a tremendous amount of surprises other than that I can think of across the House of Delegates. Chuck Caputo had a little tighter race than any of us expected, I think.
Right.
But again, that's out in an area where if you want to call any area a Republican stronghold, that would be, if there is one left in Fairfax, that would be sort of towards where it is, that western part of the county.
Turning it blue, though. They are turning it blue one precinct at a time out there in Sully. And they're doing a great job at it, too.
And Jay Donahue's race, against Tom Rust, Thomas Davis Rust, that was a tough one, but, Rust has been a moderate, and he's pretty popular, and he's been around, and it was an uphill battle, and I think Donahue waged a valiant effort against him, and it was a good spirited campaign, but it was a tough one to win.
Yeah, it's hard to unseat a moderate Republican who's lived in the community, and Tom Rust did his community service before he got elected also. What was that, 166 votes or 199 votes or something like that? It was extremely close.
Sometimes I think I would prefer to lose by a lot more than just that type of margin. That's why my heart goes out to Janet so much in terms of, you have to stay awake at night saying, I could have gotten those 92 votes.
Why didn't I do this, or where were they? Why didn't I do that?
And, it's not worth flogging yourself over it. Once it's over, it's over. You do everything you can. A political campaign is an imperfect operation anyway. You try to get as much done as you can. You never get everything done that you want to get done, but you have to do what you have to do, and you go for the places where you get the votes, and you lose some votes and you win some votes, and then the smoke clears on election day.
Yep.
We talk about these races, but the overbearing, we've got two big races and maybe more facing us next year right here in Fairfax County. One is electing another Democrat to the U.S. Senate. We elected Jim Webb 2 years ago, or a year and a half ago,
Right.
and I guess it's just over a year ago.
Right.
And
we're going to send Mark Warner to join him. Yeah, absolutely.
And, little did we know that Jim Webb would become senior senator so
yes,
quickly.
Right.
And I think he's proven himself so far.
Absolutely.
And, you know, I think the only thing we have to be careful is that we don't continue to walk around saying Mark Warner's race is a cakewalk.
Oh, yeah. You get in real trouble when you get overconfident.
You don't want to you never want to underestimate the Republicans. You know, they've got plenty of good operatives in this state, and you know, we view it with this Northern Virginia view, but once you get outside of Northern Virginia, you get outside of Hampton Roads, the city of Richmond itself, Roanoke, and a few other places.
Little pockets.
All of a sudden, it's a different world.
Right.
In terms of politics.
Yep.
And that's, you know, Mark Warner's strength is that he worked those pockets, and he worked those areas where there were Republican strongholds, and he pulled a lot of votes, and I think he'll get a lot of Republican votes this time.
I think he will too.
You know, there are people talking about challenging Jim Gilmore on the Republican side, and I suggest part of that is because they know he's going to be a weak candidate.
Well, I don't know that he's going to be such a weak candidate, but he has a record. And he has a record of putting this state into debt.
Mm-hmm.
And Mark Warner followed him. And we know what Mark Warner had to do in order to get us out of debt. He had to raise taxes, which he pledged not to do.
Mm-hmm.
So they're going to use that against him. But Mr. Car Tax, thank you very much, has cost this state millions.
Well, he wanted to cut the car tax, which I think everybody hates. We all know
everybody
that.
hates it. Right.
He wanted to cut the car tax, eliminate the car tax, which never was quite done. But at the same time, he could not find commensurate reductions in spending.
Exactly.
And I think that he knew that he'd be throwing the onus onto the next administration anyway, so why worry about it?
Right.
And Gilmore's presidential run was a joke. I mean, he raised very little money, and he just didn't seem to have any kind of strong organization.
Yeah.
So, I certainly will today predict a Mark Warner victory next year for the U.S. Senate, but also suggest we have to stay on our toes and we have to keep working and we can't let down our guard because, it may still not be Jim Gilmore. They still have a process to go through, a convention process.
Yeah, they've opted for a convention.
Yeah, and you could end up, there are a couple of other Republicans out there talking.
Hey, for all we know, Mark Warner could have somebody who wants to challenge him. And I think we voted statewide to do a primary.
A primary, correct, and subsequently the 11th District voted to do a primary there for the same reason.
Right.
But the Warner race will be the big kahuna, and hopefully Mark will draw a lot of votes and draw a strong support out of Fairfax County and Prince William County, which will help us in the 11th District.
Right. I think Loudoun is turning bluer as we speak.
Mm-hmm.
We need to get a little farther out on the west. But
we even have to continue to work in Western Fairfax. We know it, and the Republicans know it.
Right.
So please hang out with us. We have a 2-minute break, and we'll be back, and I urge you to stay tuned. Thanks for watching.
This is Mommy's bed. Me and Jenny were jumping on it. Mommy's gun fell on the floor. I was a cowboy. Bang, 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 bang. I said, Jenny, wake up, it's just pretend. But she wouldn't wake up.
If you give me a fish.
If you give someone a fish.
You feed them for a day.
Teach someone to fish.
You feed them for a lifetime.
Give me a fish, and you'll feed me for a day. Teach me to fish, and you'll feed me for a lifetime.
Through Volunteers of America, you can help change lives in your community.
mister studied algebra in school and got a better job than I could. You take the last cup.
Oh, no, Mr. Stuck in an entry-level job because you only learn basic math. I don't have a boss riding my butt like you do, so you take it so you can get back to your desk.
You know, I probably should, but maybe Miss AP Calculus with the $200 haircut in the big office upstairs would like a cup.
Oh no, Mr. What was your name again? Never mind, it doesn't matter. I'm too busy doing important things to care. I just came down for some sweet and start.
You know, if my limited math abilities weren't keeping me from getting a better job, I'd quit this afternoon.
I don't blame you. But thank goodness you're stuck here because we really need someone to make the coffee.
Good God, your tax dollars at work? Excuse me?
Welcome back to Inside Scoop, Virginia. Ginny Peters is with me, and the first thing I'm going to do is put out a want ad. If any of you out there are looking for a congressman who's had a good 12-year run, he's now part of the minority, certainly would like to get into the private sector, I urge you to hire Tom Davis. He's your 11th district congressman. The big speculation, and I'm sure he's going to let it ride, is whether he's going to run again or not. Half the people that I talk to think he is, half the people think he isn't. They say, well, he dumped a bunch of money into his wife's Senate race and she lost. Well, that doesn't make a bit of difference. Tom Davis has always been known as a prolific fundraiser, and he's also a pretty good strategist. So, you know, we can only guess until he makes a decision, and nobody's heard hide nor hair from him since the election.
Nobody's seen him. Nobody even knows where he is.
And
he's
usually,
very, very silent.
Yeah, and he's usually everywhere. So he's probably, you know, weighing his options. And Tom, if you're watching, I really hope you get that job. It'll make our job a lot easier in the 11th district this year.
I think if he gets offered a good enough job, he might reconsider about running for Congress again.
Sure, I think he
I mean, Tom does not want to be in the minority. I mean, that's obscene for him.
And he's going to be further, the minority is going to be smaller this time around because there are 16, at least 16, maybe now 17 Republican House seats that are where Republicans are retiring.
Right.
And at least in some of those races, Democrats are going to win them.
Yes.
And increase the majority.
Democratic districts without an incumbent.
There are not a lot of Democrats, as many Democrats retiring, and in many of those districts where there are retiring, we should be able to hold on to those seats. So, Tom, it's not going to get any more fun in Congress, so I really, hope you get that job. But on the same time, we are going to have a heck of a ride between now and the June primary, June 2008 11th district primary. You have former Congresswoman Leslie Byrne in the race, and she's running full tilt. She'll be on this show within the next couple of weeks. And I had Doug Deneny on last night, and he's a newcomer, but he did a pretty good show, and he's starting to get his message aligned and the like, but he's got a ways to go. He's a beginner. He's going to make missteps, but he's certainly going to add to the spirit of the race. And then there's the speculation, or you hear people saying, well, we're urging Andy Hurst to run. He ran last time. He has another shot. I don't think that's going to happen. I haven't asked Andy directly, but I feel pretty certain he probably will not enter the race. And then there's the big wild card, whether or not Connolly gets in.
Right.
Jerry Connolly, he's elected countywide here in Fairfax now. He pulled 113,000 votes, almost 114,000 votes. Won every magisterial district.
That's Fairfax County, though.
And it's two-thirds of the district. And then
what's going to happen in Prince William?
Well, my speculation in Prince William is, just as the Barker campaign looked at it, is that no matter who runs as a Democrat for Congress will lose most of, not all, but a lot of the precincts in Prince William County, which accounts for about a third of the district.
Right.
They'll win some.
Well, they were in the district when Leslie was Congresswoman the first time.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure how she did in her second run, her re-election run against Tom Davis, but he, I think, beat her in Fairfax County because even some of our good Democrats think he's this great guy.
Yeah, well, he does. He's always had some popularity among Democrats. I think that those Democrats who support Davis are apt to be less supportive now that they've seen his record of a number of years where he's voted very conservatively with the conservative leadership, strictly so he could maintain a committee chairmanship. Yep. And that last time around, I know he was boiling over all the little signs that said voted with Bush 90% of the time. And he'd always correct him and say, I only voted with Bush 86% of the time. Well, that's bad enough, quite frankly.
Well, and when Andy ran, we had other things that we were saying, look, this is a guy who caucused with Newt Gingrich, but we could never pin him. He's like Teflon Tom.
And, you know, if you look at the race when he defeated Leslie Byrne, that was a big, big Republican year. That's the year the Republicans took over the Congress. That was the Newt Gingrich era.
The contract with
America. There was a lot of stuff, and it was a big Republican year, and I think that she got swept up in that as well. But now she's got a different kind of race. You know, I think that she's fully prepared to run against Tom. She was at the 11th CD meeting, and she's been at other meetings where she said she's in it for keeps, whether Tom Davis is in it or not. It's of no concern to her. No matter who's in it, she's in it. She's going for it, and she feels she's going to win. And then you have, at this point, still in the shadows, and neither of us know for certain what he's going to do, is you have Jerry Connolly out there. And he's become a household word in Northern Virginia. I mean, you can't go a week in the Post without reading about it.
And if it turns out that Tom Davis doesn't run, who are the Republicans going to put forth?
I heard some names.
I heard some names too, but they were...
Sean Connaughton, I don't think he's going to give up the deal he has now.
In Prince William?
He's got some federal position, I think it deals with maritime law or something that he does, an appointment.
I heard Bob Marshall.
Bring him on.
Yeah.
Bring him on. That would be a killer.
Yeah.
That would be a killer. We could guarantee we'd own the seat then.
Who was the other one?
I heard Michael Powell, who's
Jay O'Brien.
Jay O'Brien. We'll bring Jay on too. You know, George Barker
just beat him.
And I think that he's not well known in the rest of the county and in the rest of Prince William. And I don't think right now he's in the position to wage a congressional campaign.
Probably not.
And Michael Powell is the former chairman of the FCC, or is he currently chairman? I'm not sure. But his father was Colin Powell. But I still don't think that that any of these guys, if Davis isn't in the race, and it's been whispered in my ear by Republicans before, the Democrats own that seat.
Yeah. Well, it's such a Democratic district. You can see that by the Senate races, by the House races, by the Board of Supervisor races. It's just totally blue.
And we'll see, but we have to get through a primary first. As I said earlier, the 11th district committee has voted for a primary, so that is the way we're going to do it. We'll notify the state shortly of that decision, and you may have a primary with Mark Warner in it. It may be some, Green candidate or whatever in November in the middle too. But at this point, at least, we don't see any other Democrats rising to the surface to challenge him. And Mark still has this incredible level of popularity, so he'll be on the ballot. And then, but in this primary, if it's Leslie Byrne and Jerry Connolly, Doug Deneny's going to have to be ducking.
Ducking?
Fireballs are going to be going over his head every time you turn. And
he's, I don't think, going to know what hit him if those two have to go at it against each other.
I think he'll be stuck in the middle, and they'll just be hurling the fireballs over his head, around him, and unfortunately sometimes through him.
Yeah.
Both of them are very experienced campaigners. Both of them have a very good grasp of the issue, both Connolly and Leslie. Leslie's got a bit of a head start. She's grabbed some union endorsements already. She's got a lead on the fundraising side of it because she started. fundraising already. And of course, if you're not a declared candidate or don't form as Leslie Byrne did on the front end, she formed, I think, an exploratory committee which enabled her to get the campaign moving. And if you don't have either an exploratory committee or a federal election campaign committee established, you can't raise a penny.
Right. Well, and all the money that Jerry Conley raised this past year for his chair's race, he can't use in a federal election.
I checked with them the other day, and apparently he'd spent it all. His most of it's all been spent. It's like under $100,000, $90,000 or $80,000 that they have at this point, and we spent a bit of that on that.
On the party on Saturday, right?
And
we didn't spend any $100,000.
No way. No. And but that means that he has to start raising money from scratch.
Right.
And so he'll have to do that.
And there are different limits on, you know, you can't, in a local and a state election, anybody can give you money.
As much as they want.
Corporate money.
As much as they want, right?
Yeah, and in a federal election, it's a whole lot different. There are limits on what individuals can give. PACs can't, I mean, unions can endorse, but they can't give money, right?
They can only give money out of their federal PAC.
Okay.
So we often see local unions endorsing in state races, but the fact of the matter is ultimately it's the International's PAC that has money that was raised under federal rules voluntarily, et cetera.
Right.
So yeah, you're right.
But
it's a whole different money. Oh, they're limited.
$5,000. I mean, good heavens, that's nothing in a congressional race.
We're down to our last minute.
Okay, what's with Frank Wolf?
Oh.
And pornography.
That's right. He's hiring 2 retired cops for $100,000
well, no, it's
to search for porn or something.
$150,000 grant, your tax dollars at work.
Yeah.
To hire people to look at porn sites? I mean, I don't understand this.
It was basically going to hire a couple of retired cops, as I understand it, to do it. So, well, he's, you know, I know a lot of people who'd probably do that for nothing.
He didn't need to pay him to do it. Huh?
Well, that's an interesting, I mean, he's doing it on his morality side, I guess.
Yes.
But the fact is that it's certainly given somebody a good job. Time has passed too quickly, Jenny. And again, I wish you the best, and I hope you stay involved in politics. I know you will. Thank you for watching today. My name is George Burke. Our guest was FCDC Chair Ginny Peters, and we'll see you next week.